Well, James, welcome back to Supercars.
Thank
the
you,
last
Jess.
time that we saw you was back in 2017, so I'm interested to know what your observations of the sport are since joining us.
Oh, look, the sport's been incredibly resilient. When you look at what we've got, how world-class the motorsport is, I think it's actually a fantastic business. Good to see the teams doing well. And people probably underestimate the structural change of bringing in Gen 3 and getting it to a point, where we have the type of racing that we do today. So, I think it's in a very good spot and, ready for its next phase of growth.
There's some really exciting momentum at the moment. Obviously, Toyota will be joining us on the grid in 2026. We've got 888 Race Engineering moving back to Ford, a double header in New Zealand. What are you most excited about?
Oh, look, I think for us it's actually that next phase of commercial growth. So you talk about all the things which, again, I can't take any credit for. That goes to, sort of Shane and the race board and the team owners. But, putting all that together and extending the experiences for our fans, I think is, we can really start to focus on that. We've probably been very focused on the motorsport product and bringing the motorsport product together. Now I think we can look at how we can expand. And expanding the calendar has always been, racing more, which we've seen obviously with the new formats. Trying to get the calendar for 26 to a 14 race format in terms of Australia and New Zealand. And again, really expanding those things is really crucial for us.
We're here in Perth and there's obviously a lot of talk about the potential of a Perth street race. Why do you think that's important for supercars, and conversely, why would it be so important for this region to have supercars have a street race right in the heart of the city?
Well, for us, we're a national championship. We go to every state and every territory. We are very well supported here in WA. But, for us, it's actually about kicking our year off with that, signature event that we always had for those years with Adelaide, which is obviously now our finale. But, when you look at what the WA government is trying to achieve here, they're building an entertainment and sports precinct that can bring major events to the city. And so, by having a permanent pit building, a little bit like we had in Townsville, every other sport and event can use that over the course of years. They're talking about a 21,000 seat amphitheatre so they can bring world-class acts in. And then within that, we would bring a 4 to 10 day festival, to bring an unbelievable, sort of street race. And so again, you look at, the economic stimulus, third party numbers, in Adelaide, not our numbers, $63 million of economic stimulus, 58 million on the Gold Coast. So this will be a major, sports event for WA, and we'd love to launch it here. If that's what the government wants to do.
You talk about expanding the calendar. The last time you were the CEO of Supercars, there was a real focus on trying to expand internationally. What's your vision for that moving forward?
Yeah, look, I think we can, but it's important to say to our fans, Australia will always be, or Australia and New Zealand will always be 14 rounds, 12 in Australia and 2 in New Zealand. And it's really about looking at a duplicate kit of cars and of equipment and thinking about how we can expand either as a sport category to other, mainstream categories, or through sort of an Asian championship, which the time zones work very well and we can beam those races back and obviously complement what we're doing in terms of the Australian Championship.
There's a lot of conversation going on right now around the TV rights still. From your point of view, how do you see the future of those broadcast partnerships evolving?
Not a lot of change. We've had fantastic partners, of course, in Fox Sports and Seven, and again, I can't take any credit. We're in the final, sort of stages of contracting, those things, and we'll make announcements at the appropriate time. But I think, for us, it's not only that, but it's also the digital product and how we can continue to engage with fans, that we can put a lot more work into and create a better experience for our fans.
Gen 3 has been a huge shift for the category, and you mentioned your early thoughts on the racing product. How do you see that moving forward into the future as well?
Like anything, it needs to go through a period and then settle down. So I think, again, talking to all the teams and team owners, it's really about making sure that we've got a strong car that can withstand the type of racing we want to see. So there's probably a few tweaks here and there, probably a little bit of cost containment for the teams. It's quite an expensive car. But our job, very simply, is to provide transparency and make sure that every manufacturer, every team walks through the gate and there's no noise about parity, that it's there and that we're delivering on that. And I think we're pretty close to to achieving that outcome.
Well, we've seen 2 of the closest finishes in history this year. Parity is always a conversation in the back of the paddock. How do you plan to engage in those parity conversations and ensure moving forward that the racing remains as good as it's been this year?
Well, again, I think it comes down to total, sort of transparency in terms of the overall numbers. I mean, remembering, Supercars' job is to look at changes and, things that teams want to do and actually approve the direction they want to go. So as an example, there's been quite a huge degree of work, between the last round in Tasmania and here in Perth by the DJR homologation team as an example, and changes that they want to sort of bring to the car have been improved. So again, we'll get the data set, we'll look at it transparently, and I think we've probably got to be more open or outbound as a category about what the differences are. We're talking about 0.046%, between some of the engines. So we're talking about very, very minute, numbers versus BOP, balance of performance in GT racing, where it could be 8 to 9 kilometres, between manufacturers. So it's actually pretty good. But again, we don't want the noise. We want every team and every fan to know there is no issue and away we go.
The action that we see on track goes hand in hand with the experience that our fans have here when they come to a Supercars event. And I know that that really is at the centre of everything Supercars does. Where does that start, and how does Supercars get better for the fans?
Yeah, I mean, new events is sort of really key. So obviously, sort of we'd love to be in Perth in terms of a street race. We'd also like to have another style of street race similar to what we had in Newcastle, somewhere in New South Wales, whether that's in Western Sydney or in a regional centre. But for us, it's actually about being fresh. We're competing with major events, major sports, and it's actually about us making sure we continue to freshen up what we've got, and that will be a very big focus for me.
James, for you, what does success look like over this next chapter?
Growth. Last time around it was growing the economics and bringing the sustainability into the sport, which I think we did a good job with. But now for me, it's actually about growing. We're 1 in 4 Australians that love the sport, that are active fans, and we want that to be more. We want more and more and more growth. So growth in television, growth in digital the broadcast side, as I said. So yeah, it's all about growth and great experiences and people loving our sport.
James, welcome back. It's great to have you back. Thanks for taking some time to sit down and have a chat with us.
Thank you, Jess, and great to be back.